Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan, and with the death of Dr. Karen mere hours away, I wanted to celebrate with one final pre-regeneration video looking at the shills of access and mainstream media coping with how bad the viewership numbers for her entire run have been on this show, and their attempt to prove why it was such a big deal and how she changed the show forever. And this is just quite a cringe piece of media coming from The Guardian that I am actually pretty excited to read because it is that bad. But we have this article here from The Guardian which says how the first female Time Lord changed Doctor Who forever. Now, this article is going to try to argue that change is wholly positive, but my argument would be like, yes, you did change it forever. You killed it. The Timeless Children destroyed Doctor Who. It's dead, so yeah, you changed it. Good on you. You know, you should wear that with a badge of honor. And so they start out this article with this like, oh, this isn't a new thing. They've wanted female doctors before. And yes, that is very much true. And my position on it is, in a very specific case, with good writing being the top priority, absolutely a female doctor could work. I don't think there should be necessarily. There's a difference between can and should. The character of the Doctor is a man, and that's okay. This is the thing that I don't understand about modern media, is they're so afraid of letting things be what they always were, be popular for what they were, to have the heart and the core of it stay the same. It's terrifying for them to have things stay the same, and there's nothing wrong with things keeping to what the show was. And so I think under the right circumstances, a female doctor could work. I'm a big fan of Missy as the Master, so I do believe something could work. It's just, should it? Because the Doctor is the Doctor, and the core that makes him who he is throughout his regenerations is a degree of strength and masculinity, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with the character being who he is, and that's something that I never understood from these people. But yeah, they do bring up some instances where a female has played the role before in spin-off media, like this sketch from Comic Relief, or nearly did after Tom Baker and stuff like that, and they're using that as evidence to say that it's not woke, it's not new. But their argument for why she is a great addition to Doctor Who and why this is going to be the most important era in Doctor Who's history is rather baffling, so we get into it. After 12 actors, it's a huge deal when Whittaker became the Doctor. Nothing wrong with that statement. It is factually correct, but for different reasons. There was inevitably a backlash. Change can be scary to those who are used to seeing something that was always embodied their own lives. Now, this gets into the argument that I don't understand whatsoever. The inability to relate to any character that doesn't exactly look like you on screen. I've related to so many characters in so many different medias that I don't look like or don't relate to in any sort of physical or superficial way, because I have empathy and I relate to their stories, not to their physical attributes. I could list dozens and dozens of examples, and so could all these people that you're labeling, oh, you just don't want it to not be a white man because you're a white man. No, that's not an argument. It's okay for the character to stay as he is. If you want to embody other characters that are more diverse, go for it. Write original content. Why are these people so afraid of writing original content? It's as if they don't trust their creativity. And that might be it, actually. That might very well be it. But I'm all for people trying to make something as big as Doctor Who. You want something that has that cultural impact? Make it. Just like the people who made Doctor Who. You need to be as good as them if you want to compete as the same level as them. Just taking something, co-opting it, is cheap and doesn't show why this diversity is important. It merely shows why it's not good enough to do on its own, and you have to co-opt something else to make it valuable. It's called the bigotry of low expectations, and I am very fond of that term because it exemplifies these people's mentalities. They are so afraid of original content that will never be something that they even strive to do. But the negativity doesn't compare with the positives that come from the diversification. Let's talk about the positives. Yeah, I got nothing. When we talk about the negatives, fans leaving in droves, hating it, and nothing can exemplify the negatives to what they've done, which isn't the diversity itself, it's the poor writing that was masked with diversity. They used the diversity as a shield for the bad writing. But the clearest evidence that says it was all negatives, look at this. Doctor Who, Season 10. Peter Capaldi's last season, and it was already on a sharp decline here because the writing was going down here and already getting woke. But at this time, we were getting 6 million views worldwide, nearly 7, 6. Pretty good for season 10. All right. Not great. Really not great compared to some of the stuff we got in the Matt Smith and David Tennant era, but nothing to scoff at. getting close to 6-7 million mark, dipped down to 4. What did the last episode that Jodie Whittaker had prior to The Power of the Doctor get in viewership? 2.2 million overnight. Now, that did get up to 3.6 after the first week, the consolidated views. But that's millions of people who dipped out over the course of her run because of the poor writing and the weaponization of diversity. So what positives could you possibly be referring to that outweigh the negatives that you saw for this diversification? See, that's the thing with these articles. They don't actually ever provide any evidence like I just did. They just have big aggrandizing statements of, oh, diversity is like awesome and it's the bestest ever. But they never actually try to argue their point, which is the backbone of journalism is to provide proof, facts, argue a point, and be neutral when the opportunity arises, when it's just reporting on the news. This is an opinion piece, so you've got to actually back up your opinion. They don't even try. It's all about emotions. It's not about fact. And I think that's a big sign of degradation in the access media and mainstream media landscapes. But continuing, as much as I loved Doctor Who my whole life, says writer Juno Dawson, there's a subliminal message running across the first 50 years. Men are the central characters and women are the insistent companions. Now, I wholly and fully disagree with that because it's more like the main character of each season is the companion. That's how I've always seen it. We develop their characters over the course of their season or multiple seasons. We focus on their personal lives. We focus on their story. The Doctor is a character that gives the human companion adventures. We don't really know a whole lot about the Doctor, and we like it that way. A lot of the revelations that were made in The Timeless Children would making the Doctor the main character, and that's where some of the problems arose from. They stopped making the companions the main characters, and that's a problem. Now, you can have certain episodes like the Heaven Sent one, which is phenomenal, which is just focused on him, but I've always saw the companion as the main characters, and they're vastly important. The Doctor is not the Doctor without his companions. He loses his heart, his humanity. He turns into the War Doctor or the Time Lord Victorious. That's why he needs the humanity aspect. He needs his companions. And the companions, that's the story we tell in each season. The Doctor doesn't really get a whole lot of development over the course of his regenerations besides the War Doctor and the repercussions of the Time War. So you've fundamentally misunderstand the point of the series and who the main character of each section is. As much as having a woman as the Doctor was a huge cultural moment, little girls can see the women are heroic, they're important, and they're fearless. That's fine. Do that in your own original work. You don't need to co-opt a male property and make it a female property, even though, the audience for Doctor Who is actually skewed very female, more than most science fiction shows. Make something new and original that has a female main character. Because any little girls who have any intelligence or old enough to realize what's actually going on don't see this as, oh, I'm on screen, I can be anything. They see it as, oh, I'm not good enough to make it on my own. I have to steal something from a man to be valuable. Again, the bigotry of low expectations. Now, if you wanted something in the Doctor Who universe that was like that, do you know how excited fans would be for a Romana show, for a Ronnie spinoff? How much we love the Sarah Jane Adventures? I would kill for a Romana show. She's one of my favorite classic Who companions. You wouldn't have had many fan complaints because that would have been an original idea spin-off that incorporated into the world and the lore in a proper way that made sense. They're not willing to do that because that takes effort, that takes creativity, and goes against their motto of bigotry of low expectations. Women's stories must get the same capital as those about men. No, that's not how you guys do it. That's how I believe it should be. But that means making women stories, making a story about a woman alien. Do your own thing. It's not getting the same capital as a male property because you're stealing it from a man. That's not equality. That's co-optization. I don't understand these people's mentality. It's quite an asinine perspective. Going on a little bit more, they just really start listing all the diversity that they've had while not focusing on the terrible writing that was involved. For example, they say, evidence suggests that casting people from diverse backgrounds can improve our mental health. That is a strong statement because I've watched all black shows and it affected my mental health in a positive way because it was a good story, well written, that made me think. It's almost as if it has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with story. As long as we're drawing these lines between the races and between every sort of identity that exists these days, it's only making division more ingrained into our society. Act like it's not a big deal and it will cease to be a big deal. Make original stuff. Be as good as the show was. Make something that is as culturally impactful as Doctor Who with all the diversity you want, and focus on making it a good story that can stand the test of time. Because you didn't do that. You just co-opted a male franchise and drove it into the ground because you're not willing to even try. So this mental health is going to be short-lived if that even exists, and if that is even a real thing that is possible to happen. We learn about our identity and how that identity is seen in the world partly through the way people who share our identities are portrayed in media. Historically, representation of women, black people, people of color, LGBT, alphabet, and people with disabilities have been less prolific, and people have often found themselves in stereotyped supporting roles. Make new stuff that shows that better, and they should not reference the historical aspect of this, because a lot of times when they try to input diversity into historical things, like Doctor Who when they go back in time, or the Anne Boleyn story, or the Joan of Arc story, they don't actually tell the story of the true diversity from history, the true great stories from history. They just co-opt stories that are from a white perspective or a male perspective and inject diversity into those stories. Again, the bigotry of low expectations. There are stories about these diverse people in history. Show them. That does actually what you're wanting it to do. Showing them portrayed well in the media in a historically accurate sense with these people who have incredible stories. Do that. And that'll get across the point that you're trying to make in this paragraph. But if you're just co-opting bigotry of low expectations, it just doesn't actually have the same effect that you somehow believe it would. But if you did true stories from history about these diverse characters, it would have that effect. So it goes on to say, Mort says increased on-screen diversity will improve the self-esteem of those represented, and having behind-the-camera talent from communities being portrayed on-screen will ensure the authenticity of those narratives. Original content and good writing. You can't just say, oh, we're diverse, so everyone's going to love it, but we don't actually know how to write, so it's actually awful. But we're diverse. Again, it has to be good. That is the thing that people forget these days. They act like diversity is a cure-all for bad writing. No, it has to be supported by good writing, or otherwise it is contradictory or meaningless. And they don't seem to understand that no matter how hard you try. They just don't have the intelligence or are unwilling to see that good writing is the basis of affecting the audience, not the physical, superficial attributes of those represented on screen and behind the camera. This way, diverse narratives can be told, not just stereotyped. I'm all for not stereotyping diverse characters. Do it in ways that make sense in the world, that don't contradict what came before, and if you want to have diverse main characters, make your own stuff, or do a spin-off. Don't just co-opt something. Bigotry of low expectations will destroy you every single time you try to make a superficial change and use it to cover up awful writing. Now, they go into a section here where there's like, oh, it's so great that in a certain episode in season 11, they were all women behind the camera and writing it and directing it. In 2018, for the first time in 35 years, Doctor Who featured an episode, The Witchfinders, written and directed by women. Funnily enough, one of those women who wrote this episode has never written a single episode of television or really any creative writing in her entire life. She was a feminist writer who only wrote feminist propaganda. And then she was asked to write an episode of sci-fi. Yeah, that's not a recipe for success. Just having a political pundit come in and write an episode isn't gonna reap a good and well-written story. And that episode exemplifies the outcome of having such a narrow perspective of what storytelling and creativity should look like. That episode is horrifically written. And so they're just like, oh, there are all women there, forgetting that it still has to be good. Hire based on merit. If that happens to be all women, great. If it happens to be all men, great. If it happens to be diverse, great. Hire the people who are best equipped for the job. You can't just say we hired women so it's good, even though you hired people who were terrible for the job, a la She-Hulk. She is the center of each victory rather than supporting from the sidelines, just talking about more of the diversity. Whittaker's debut series also marked the first time the show had black or Asian writers. Again, it's not, hey, we have great writers, we're really excited to see what they can come up with. They're very talented people, they're going to do a great job, we're really excited to see what happens. Oh, we've got an Asian, guys, we've got an Asian! Have they ever written anything? They're an Asian, don't be racist, they're an Asian! Do they have experience? Are they going to be, he's an Asian! Quality is still something that matters. Quality assurance has been thrown out the window in order for cheap diversity, bigotry of low expectations. I'm going to say that term so many times in this video because it so accurately contradicts everything that they're doing. All their points would actually get across well if they focused on good writing as the core of all of this. They could actually be making the points that they're thinking they're making with good writing. The journalist David, I'm not pronouncing that last name, said, "It shocked me when I realized that Doctor Who had never hired a non-white actor until Mallory Blackman. Even then, I had worries that there would be an attempt to sanitize Rosa Parks' story. But when less than 5 minutes in, companion Ryan, a black man, was assaulted for daring to speak to a white woman, I knew nothing was off the table. That story was horrifically done. They co-opted Rosa Parks' story and made it because of a white woman that she did what she did. They don't even realize that they're, again, being racist. Bigotry of low expectations and just pure stupidity, not realizing the effects of things that they're saying. You can't just portray a story and expect it to tell the point you want it to tell. You still have to have the talent to accurately portray that story in a positive way that is historically accurate and gets across any point you're trying to say. This is all just terrible writing, and funnily enough, there was not even a single point made in that article. It's just, oh, lots of diversity. Never actually making an argument, never actually having a cohesive conversation to be had from this writer's perspective, just quoting a bunch of other people, just saying it's diverse, so it's great. So yes, I would have to agree that the first female Time Lord, even though that's incorrect, she's not the first female Time Lord, she's the first Doctor, but there have been female Time Lords since, 1965? See, they don't even know the show that they're criticizing, or praising in this case. They don't know what they're talking about. They just focus on the superficial diversity, and that's all that matters to them. And they're proved wrong every single time with the bigotry of low expectations and factually inaccurate statements in their own headlines. Now, I do agree it has changed Doctor Who forever, and I'm just waiting for Dr. Karen to die to get any sort of catharsis out of that event possible, because she has changed it forever. She's destroyed it. She's driven it into the ground and ruined it for so many millions and millions of people. And I will be having a great review and live streams talking about how this end comes about for Dr. Karen. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Anon. If you like what I do here and want to see good, compelling stories that Hollywood will no longer give you, check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues. Books 1, Down in Flames, and Book 2, Apocalypse Then, currently on sale. Book 3, Kill the Dark, coming soon.